back. Welcome to another exciting readings course. I just discovered that the projector doesn't work unless you plug it into the laptop. I was sitting here trying to figure out what was wrong with my drivers and was playing with all the settings until I realized it wasn't plugged in. So apparently plugging in makes a difference. How many people went to the presentation last Monday? It was good, wasn't it? Was it okay? Yeah? What'd you think? Boring. Was it boring? No? It was did he have too many PowerPoint slides? No. Did you go to the come on in. Did you go to the one with Mohammed Avenaki? That was the one that was done on biomedical optics. Did you see that one too? Yes. So which one was better? The last one was better? Oh, I see. Did everybody think that was true? Who thought the Mohammed Avenaki biomedical optics one was better than the microgrids? Anybody? No? Who thought the microgrids was better? Only one, two, three? Only three. Who doesn't vote? Raise your hand. Oh, everyone. You don't believe in democracy. Communists. So it turns out it's very important for us to get feedback from the students about the presenters because we have to decide who to hire, you see. So this is your chance to put your oar in the water and make a difference. So I'm on the search committee, and if everybody said, oh, this guy was terrible, then it would make a difference. But I think you people have no opinion. And you know what I mean when I say you people, right? I mean you guys, right here. So I'm thinking this is important. We'll have another presentation from another ECE faculty candidate. Now please keep in mind, if we hire people, they will become your professors. These will be your instructors. So when Radian Ballou starts to present something on microgrids, if it doesn't seem exciting, even though he should be excited about it, just imagine what it would be like if you had him for 15 weeks in a power class, because that's what he would teach, you know. He would teach power. So we need to know these things. We'll have another presenter on Thursday. It'll be Dr. John Williams. And of course you are welcome to come. It's very good if you can come on time. The dean remarked that many of you were coming late just to sign and get your grade. I think that's not correct. It may be even a little rude because when you come in it disturbs the speaker a little bit. So if you can come on time, that's really very good. And I will have a sign-up sheet available for you. His work will be on nanotechnology. And there's a compelling argument for you to come and review the speakers. First, they may become your professors if we hire them. And so your feedback is very important. Second, and I think also very important, is that these are professional people who have PhDs and who know how to do a presentation. And you all of you will be doing a presentation for this class. So you may like to go to these presentations to see how it's done professionally. So these are individuals who are presenting their research, perhaps research that they have worked on for their entire adult professional lives, especially if they're young, and this is part of their thesis work. So if you think about it, they really worked hard to do these presentations. And maybe you would not have to put in that kind of lengthy effort, but eventually you will have something to show. It won't be a PhD thesis level research, maybe only thesis work, or maybe just a thesis proposal. But still, it's going to be up to you guys to come up with good PowerPoints and do a proper presentation. So I rely upon you to come for your own professional development. Keep in mind, if you want to be leaders in technology, if you want to move up the management hierarchy, you must be able to pitch your ideas. You have to be able to present them in order to get resources from management, because you will say, I have this great idea. You'll work for a company for a while and you'll say, I think we can do the following and make the company a bunch of money, but here are the resources I need to do it. And if you cannot present yourselves well, you will not be able to get these resources. So this is one of those things. You can be the person who says, or you can be the person who does. And maybe at some point you will be the person who says after a while. It takes time. So to be that kind of a person, the person who says, I think these are good ideas and let's do it, and get the resources to go and do it and move ahead. Technical leadership requires good communication. Technical leadership means being able to come across very well and be convincing. So if you can do those things, you can move up the ladder of success. You can get funding for your next great idea or invention from venture capitalists. You can essentially convey and convince. And these are the things that you need to be able to do. In effect, you are engineers, but you also must be salesmen. And believe it or not, I was never trained as a salesman, but I don't let that stop me. Because if I did, I would not be able to do good recruiting. I would not be able to pitch my ideas to others. I would not be able to convey and convince. These are important things for you to be able to learn to do. And no one is born knowing how to do these things. So I claim this class will serve you throughout your adult professional lives if you can maybe master some of the skills that we're trying to get you to learn. So that's why I think this class is sort of an important class. And if you look at the curriculum, it's really the only required course. Very important. So it's a communications course. And believe me, they don't teach you about this to prepare you for your TOEFLs or your IELTS. It's not the same, right? The IELTS, if you studied for classes for IELTS, they don't teach you this stuff, right? They don't teach you Gantt charts and PowerPoints, and they don't teach you how to do a proper engineering problem statement. It's a different skill. One of the things I was experimenting with was the idea of setting up milestones. Milestones are points between innovation and commercialization. Innovation comes about because you have some great idea that you are developing, and commercialization comes about when you monetize that idea. And monetizing an idea can mean licensing, it can be manufacturing, it can be I want to start a business, it can be I'm going to take this idea and I'm going to put it forward so that others will allow me to move the idea through the company and let someone else do the monetization of the idea, someone else to do the sales. So if you look at a big organization, like Fairfield University is kind of a big organization, individuals like me are just a cog in the machine, right? I can squeak, but maybe I will not get the grease. So as a result, if I want to make a difference, I have to put together a new proposal, and I have to pitch that proposal. I'll give you an example. When I first came here in 1999, they did not have computer engineering. I had to propose it. When I first came, they did not have a master's in electrical and computer engineering. No master's program. I had to propose it and take it through the committees and championing it. And they had no 5-year program for electrical engineering or for computer engineering so that you could be here for 5 years and get the extra degree. Had to propose it. So in order to be able to move things forward, you have to create proposals and you have to pitch them to others. Convey and convince. So what happens when you build programs like the program you're in right now is you can serve the community, right? That service is a service for which some people will pay. And you guys pay, right? And if you think about it, we're a nonprofit organization, but we need money, right? Jesuits, they take a vow of poverty, but they like rich people. And the reason why is because they're always trying to do development. They're trying to do things for a large university which requires resources in order to be able to do interesting and wonderful things. So if I want to go buy an oscilloscope or buy some new 3D printer, we just got a 90-watt laser cutter in the machine room. $12,000. Expensive. But it's good to have such things, and such things cost money. Good things cost money. So for you guys to be able to go into a machine shop and see nice equipment and be able to use it for whatever it is you want to do, we have to be able to supply money so that people can go and buy these things. So this is all part and parcel of what it means to take a proposal and put it forward. I'm working with another person now, another proposal for Technology Center. That Technology Center will hire people like you with internships, and it will get businesses to come in and maybe get research assistants funded so that when you do your thesis, it pays your tuition and it pays a stipend, like a real research assistant. Well, these things don't happen by themselves. Convey and convince. So this is one of the things that I wanted to do. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about milestones, organizing your project properly, which means project management. And project management is an interesting idea. You can have a whole course in project management. So here's your whole course in 4 slides in project management. And so what we'll do is we'll say, here are these milestones on the way between innovation and commercialization, or on the way between my idea for a thesis and finishing my thesis, in your case. And I'd like you guys to be able to think about how you're going to put together your Gantt chart, and maybe we can even make a little homework assignment about it. Soon, there will be a spring break, after which we will have a midterm assignment. For the midterm assignment, we're going to have a draft thesis proposal, which will be submitted, and that will count for 25% of your grade. It's a homework assignment on steroids. It's essentially taking all the prior homeworks that you've done, reworking them so that they're nice and you fix all the problems, and then submitting it so that you have a proper thesis proposal draft for me to read with a proper list of citations and a proper approach and ethics and problem statement and motivation, and maybe even a little Gantt chart in your approach to show how you're going to be able to accomplish all these wonderful goals and over what period of time. So the Gantt chart becomes a part of what I would call one of the milestones on the way between starting this course and finishing the course. And so we'll put it in, and it'll count as one of the homeworks and also part of your midterm. So I thought it would be fun and educational for us to actually try a Gantt chart and see what we could do. There are lots of different Gantt charts. There is no one correct answer to any of this. There are software programs which you can use and buy, and I don't like to spend money on such things. So I'm going to emphasize free solutions. But if somebody here wants to try perhaps an evaluation version of Microsoft Project, or if you have Microsoft Project, that'll work too. And maybe it'll make your life a little bit easier. These Gantt charts, I don't know if you can tell, they have start dates and end dates for every single event, every milestone, and then some of the milestones can overlap. So here it says here we have kidney stones, and then we have overlapping gallstones, and then there are these rolling stones. This is my attempt to be funny. Very funny. So this is showing overlap and showing when things are done and how you can get a series of things done concurrently. Certain things will overlap, other things depend on the other. For example, I may not be able to design the software until I finish building the hardware. And if I can't have the hardware finished on time, it will push back the deadline on the software. Here's another timeline. I think this doesn't look very easy to read. Also showing some concurrency. Does everybody sort of understand what's trying to be illustrated here? Does it make sense? Yeah. So here is another timeline. I think this one is, it says here, click and then ungroup, but I don't see how I can ungroup on this one, but I should be able to move. Yeah, I can move these things around a little bit. This is not a database driven system. It's just a drawing tool. But it looks nice. There are ways in which you can get database systems that will integrate in with the timeline. Oh, and I've screwed it up. Let's see if we can make it nice again. There. It's a little messed up. I think I messed up the circle here. So let me see if I can use Google Docs. Here's a Google Doc template. Let's see if we can do this. There we go. The Google Doc template is interesting because what it enables you to do is identify dates and then the duration of the dates. So for example, here we say I've got a start date. If I double click, I get a calendar. I can pick an arbitrary start date. If I do, it changes and the other dates change as well, because this date could be a function of the prior date. Let's say we know that is the prior date plus, let's say it takes, I don't know, make up a number, 8 weeks, 60 days. And now you can see how other dates have been updated as a result, because this date apparently was 6 days after that date, and this date was 5 days after this date. In other words, I'm using the date function plus some offset in order to be able to show duration of milestones and also to show a little bit of concurrency. Here I have a date which is not necessarily a function of the prior date here, but appears to be a function of this date. So we went to this date and then said, you know, by 20 days after then, I don't have to worry about the other milestones, I can begin. So you can jump back to a prior milestone, add some date offset, and say, okay, that's when I'll begin. Using a date-driven system with estimates on how long milestones should take will facilitate your ability to move some of your deadlines around if a deadline slips. Because it may be the case that you thought you could build and test the hardware in 20 days. And then you found out you picked the wrong chip and you got to order a new one. And now instead of 20 days, it takes 30 days. So now your hardware deadline slipped. Now you've got to have all the other deadlines slip and you have to make some adjustment. It's typical that hardware always takes longer than you think. Software is that way too. You can color code these things any way that makes sense. I have these things called deadline, work in progress, things to do, stuff that's been completed, and maybe stuff that's in a specific phase. Color it any way that makes sense for you. This is one of those things where you kind of have to experiment a bit. I was playing around with a Gantt project system called smartsheet.com, and I started to put in my own tasks, and I thought, you know, this is interesting. I can try and muck about with it. And as I did, I said, well, you know, I'm not crazy about it, but it's got its videos and maybe it shows me how to use it. And I started watching it and I said, you know what, you get too involved with the tool and not involved enough with the project. But I thought it was interesting, and you should look at it if you are interested in doing that sort of thing. It's not entirely free. You know, there are certain things you can do with it that are free, but then they keep asking you if you want to upgrade. And that kind of turned me off. With the Google chart, you know, they don't ask you for an upgrade. It is what it is. And if it's okay enough for you, that's sufficient for me. I don't have to get too fancy with it. You can do this very same thing with Microsoft Excel. And if you search on the web and look for Excel templates for Gantt charts, you'll find a bunch of them. None of them look particularly better than the Google chart, and I did like the idea that it should be in the cloud and free. Do people here have Gmail accounts? You need one, you know. If you want to use Google Docs require a Gmail account. It's free, but you have to sign up for it. And so it's not an unreasonable thing to ask students to do. I have my own list of things which I put up online, and you can see I'm starting to learn it a little bit better, so I'm still trying to organize it. I got a few things on it, not a lot, a few things. So maybe somebody here has something better. I'm open to suggestions. If you find something better in the process of Googling or looking around, let me know. I'm always happy to learn new things. You could teach me. I'd prefer it, actually. So I got enough people here in the class and maybe listening. They'll be able to do some Googling, and you guys will probably try more stuff than I have time to try. And then you'll say, "Oh, Professor, have you tried this?" And that'll be great. I'll try it. And so I'll learn from you. I think that's good. Very good. So for our next class, we'll have a homework on Gantt charts. And we'll include the Gantt chart with your problem statement. I want you to keep submitting the problem statement because people still have problems with their problem statement. How many people here were told their problem statement sounds like a motivation? Nobody? Really? Oh, okay. That's good. Some people still have problems with their problem statement. It's not correct, and we have to get past that. I'm a little surprised that we're having so much trouble with so many problems with the problem statement. Very strange. So does anybody have any questions about Gantt charts? Really? None? Okay. I'd like to tell you a little bit about patents. A patent is a way in which you can maintain a monopoly on your invention. And if you think about it, a patent is a kind of intellectual property. And what you do with intellectual property is you can protect it in any one of a variety of different ways. There are copyrights, there's trademarks, there's trade secrets, there's patents. The way I like to think about it is when you look at the different areas over which you can protect your intellectual property, you can use combinations of different things. Maybe a patent plus a trade secret. And when you come out with something, you can have a fanciful design for your product, and that's your trademark. So if we think about Coca-Cola, the soft drink, we think, oh, there's a fancy trademark that goes with it because it's a script Coca-Cola, right? And that trademark effectively protects the intellectual property that is the soda Coca-Cola, but there's something else, right? There's the taste. There's a recipe. You cannot patent the recipe, but you can have a trade secret. And so somewhere there's a lock safe, and in that lock safe there's the recipe for Coca-Cola. And what they can do is they can send the syrup to a bottling plant, and they'll use the syrup to make soda, but they don't know how to make the syrup. And so that is one way in which Coca-Cola protects its intellectual property, through the fanciful design of its trademark and through the trade secret of its recipe. There's a soap manufacturer in Bridgeport. It's been a family-run business for many generations. They have never had a patent. They did a presentation once for the Inventors Association of Connecticut, and they said, the only thing we have is the trade secret on how to make our soap. It's called Amodex, which is a trademark product, and Amodex will remove even the indelible markers that may be used inadvertently on a whiteboard. It'll remove any stain. Amodex. Well, it turns out it's a very popular product. Nobody knows how to make it except for the people at Amodex. And the Amodex product has nothing but a trade secret associated with it, locked in a cabinet. And they won't tell anyone except for people in the immediate family. No patents. Turns out patents may be more expensive than they're worth. Patents can be very expensive. And so what happens when people go to get these patents, 75% of them get abandoned because they realize that the patents need licensing fees. They need legal fees. They need lawyers who charge $300 an hour. And a lot of times what happens is people don't want to pay it because the patent's not making them enough money. So they abandon the patent. I just got a notice of abandonment from the patent office this morning because I said, I'm not going to spend any more money on this patent. It isn't worth it. So the question of whether or not to get a patent is as much a business question as it is a legal question. So when you go through and do your thesis and come up with an invention, think about what it is you're going to do to protect that invention. Because this is yours, your idea, your thesis, and your invention. And you may choose to monetize that invention. So let's think about this. There are things that you can do that you can protect with a patent. Fanciful designs can be protected with a patent, but those are called design patents. Sometimes companies like Monsanto will create genetically modified seeds. Those have special patents called plant patents. Other times engineers like you will create inventions, and these inventions will result in gadgets, and those gadgets will be protected with utility patents. Sometimes you'll take those gadgets and you'll have a new algorithm and they run on the gadget. Those patents are protected by software patents, right? Those gadgets are protected by software patents. So I can have software patents, utility patents, design patents, plant patents, all these different interesting and wonderful patents. None of them are necessarily good for you, but you should be aware of them, aware that they are there. Then there's a thing that they call authorship. Authorship is different from inventorship. An author is a person who writes a paper. For that, they have a copyright. So if I write a book, it's copyrighted. But if I invent a device, then I'm an inventor and I can patent it. Maybe. So if we think about it, copyright is very good if you want to have a song, if you want to have a paper, if you want to have a book, if you want to have a record. A trademark is very good if you want to be able to sell some service, such as I have a little trademark on Doc Java Incorporated. Well, Doc Java was trademarked for doing services, right, like consulting, so that you could trademark your business under that moniker. If I choose to sell coffee, I can have a trademark right on the coffee sales, because Java sounds like coffee. If I have inventions, on the other hand, I can have those inventions invented by me and then assigned to my company. So if I, as a faculty member, invent something here at the university says I'm the inventor, and it's mentioned right on the patent, but the university will take the assignment and then license it out. So there's a compelling argument for monetizing the patent for the university by doing what they call technology transfer, by taking the patent and then licensing it out to someone who will manufacture. So when I think about a patent, I think about the right to sue. It's a very funny thing, right? You say, why do you want the right to sue? Well, that's the only thing the patent gives me. So if you duplicate what I have done and I have a patent, I can't stop you except by giving you actual notice that I have a patent, that you're in violation of the patent, and then if you continue to manufacture and violate my patent, then I can sue you. That's the only thing I can do in order to be able to stop you from manufacturing. So you do not have the freedom to operate if you're violating somebody else's patent. And you may unintentionally violate somebody else's patent. So if you have an invention for your thesis, it would be really good if you knew that you had the freedom to operate. Because if your thesis is an invention that violates somebody else's already existing invention, then you've got a problem, because you're violating somebody else's intellectual property. So I would like it very much if all of your theses had the freedom to operate. So if you said, oh, Professor Lyon, I've got this great idea for a new fractal antenna, well, maybe you ought to make sure that there isn't already a patent on that. There is, and that you're not violating somebody else's intellectual property. You will be. And once you start to manufacture anything involving that fractal antenna, as long as your thesis is not just pure research, they can sue you. So that becomes the freedom to operate issue, which many people will look for if they decide whether or not to fund your invention. They want to know that you have the freedom to operate. There's a thing that the Patent Office does when you file for a patent. The regular patent application requires that it not be obvious. The person who sits down and looks at your application is called the patent examiner. And the patent examiner will look to see if what you're doing is new, useful, and not obvious. Okay. How do I know when it's obvious? Patent examiners know. And if they come back with what's called an office action, they essentially have written you a letter saying, we're disallowing your patent because it's obvious. And you already spent the money to try and file the patent. So now what? How do you counter? How do you prove that your patent is not obvious? This is very important, and it's happened to me. So, is it possible to invent something in a vacuum? Everything depends on something prior. Somebody said, I invented a general-purpose digital computer. This actually happened. And they said, well, computers already existed, and so what you did was obvious. Well, no, it wasn't. This is the person who created the ENIAC. It was Mauchly and Eckhart. They created a new company called Univac. Turns out there was a Univac patent battle back in the 70s, and the judge said, well, it's obvious. And it wasn't kept secret prior to being filed, and publication is a positive barrier to patentability. So what does that mean? It means if you record your idea, like I am doing now, and put it up on the web, like I will do, or put it out on Kickstarter, or publish a paper, you've published it. At the time, Eckhart, Mauchly, and the ENIAC computer gave rise to a workshop. And in that workshop, they had 150 copies made of a document that described how to build the computer. And they gave it out to people. Well, the court ruled that constituted a publication. And therefore, it was a positive barrier to patentability. You cannot patent after you have published, except for if you patent within 1 year. And so there is an exception to that. It's part of what's called the America Invents Act, and it allows somebody like me, an academe, to publish a paper about the idea. It gives me 1 year of grace period. So that's one of those things that it only works in this country. It doesn't work internationally. I have one international patent. It's patented in Canada, it's patented in Japan, it's patented in this country, and it's patented in the Paris Convention Treaty nations, which represents 88 different countries. To patent in 88 different countries, you must translate your patent into 88 stinking languages with all these different firms, some of which will specialize in the Swiss, and some will be specializing in Germany, and some will be specializing in Denmark, and you have to go through and file in all these countries and pay the filing fees. By the time we were done with this international patent and the lawyers and all the filing fees, I want to say we spent over $100,000. That's what it's like to get an international patent. And plus, we ignored China, because I don't know if they care about patents over there. Really. I mean, this is a big problem. I don't know how to protect myself from Chinese copying. I just don't know how to do it. So this is a big deal, expensive deal. If I just stuck to the United States, as I have done with most of my regular patent applications, you're down an order of magnitude, down to about $10,000. And if you do a pro se filing, which means representing yourself, that's Latin, pro se, for yourself, then in effect you can save even more money by doing what's called a small entity filing, which costs about $80. And that's for a provisional patent application. So as a result, it's possible to save an awful lot of money if you do your own filing. So the question of what is obvious and what is not obvious, I must tell you, I have no good answer. There is a special test which they use called the Graham test, which we'll talk about later. But it's very subtle. It's very hard to tell. I filed one patent. It was called stochastic process simulation using Petri nets. It was published in a journal, a peer-reviewed journal called Computer Music Journal. And the patent reviewer said, "It's obvious." How is that obvious? There was this very complicated algorithm. It wasn't particularly commercially useful, and I could see him rejecting it on that basis. But how could this be obvious? So somehow he said it was obvious. I said, well, he must be a genius. If he thought that was obvious, these patent examiners must be brilliant. So obviousness is one of those things that's in the eye of the beholder, I guess. There are these things which people do, which they call process patents. And for software patents, the brunt of everybody's joke is Amazon. Amazon has the one-click purchase, and they got a patent on one click. So if you click once and buy something, that's the Amazon patent. And everybody thought you should exclude patents if something is obvious. That's totally obvious, right? How could they accept that? So that's obvious. But they thought that was okay. So they got the one-click patent. Well, it turns out maybe it's because Amazon has more lawyers than the Justice Department, and therefore they can do what they want. So that may be retroactively disallowed, but it's still there. Amazon still has its one-click patent, and it's bizarre. There are these things that people do which are called mathematical processes. The mathematical process may be some sort of equation, for example, that you can't patent. However, the algorithm which uses the equation, that you can patent. Now it gets subtle. What's the difference between an algorithm and an equation? Right? Because if you think about it, how do I compute the roots of a quadratic equation? Right? Well, I use this square root plus or minus b, a squared plus b squared thing with the big radical and the stuff underneath, and I say, aha, roots. I can compute roots. And what do you do to get the roots? Well, you take the polynomial, and you take the thingy, and you put it in there, and you take the other thingy, you put it in there, and you plug it into the calculator, and blammo, out comes an answer. That feels like an algorithm to me. But they say, oh no, that's an equation, and you can't patent that. So it's subtle. And I've never quite gotten the hang of what is the difference between an algorithm and a mathematical expression, because as far as I'm concerned, you can't separate the two. You don't have an algorithm without some math. And of course, the math lies at the core of the algorithm. The algorithm is useless without the math. So this is one of those things, when you start to think about patenting software, think about what is the difference between what is patentable and what is not. And when you make your claim, it can't include the math, but it can include the method that makes use of the math. So this is a subtle thing. I don't know if that makes it any more clear to you. It makes it clear as mud to me. But that's just the way it is in this, at least in this country. I'm not sure how the patent law is in the other countries in terms of software patents. It's subtle. Hey, come on in. So here's a patent from 1938, and it's the hat which is also an umbrella. It probably should have a fanciful name, and I'm not sure what that should be. The hat-brella? Something like this. You can get a patent on stuff like these things. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist to think of it, right? I mean, I had an invention. In Japan, they have a special invention they call inventing for the fun of it. I can never remember the name, so I'll Google it real quick, unless you guys have Google up and running. It's a Japanese term, inventing for the fun of it. They're silly inventions. Awesomely impractical inventions. I forgot what the name of it is. It is Chindogu. The art of inventing gadgets that are seemingly useful but absurd. And you can get patents on Chindogu. I don't know why I can never remember it. For example, I have an invention where you wear a mirror around the back of your head so that you can see your bald spot in the rearview mirror of the car and adjust your hair so that, it covers the bald spot. Very important invention for people with the bald spot. It works too, because nobody can tell, right? You can't see the bald spot, can you? So, it turns out, that's a Chindogu, invention for the fun of it. Their question? It's the stupidest idea you ever heard of? Yes, that's true. There should be a way to move this. Move this over here. Ah, there we go. Come on. Up there. So here's the vacuum cleaner dog. doggy vac. I can just sort of, it's like, you know what I was thinking is they have these robotic vacuum cleaners. Have you ever seen these things? Roomba is one of them. If you had a little vacuum dog, maybe it makes little batteries on the floor or something. So there's this, silly inventions that you can get, and they're certainly patentable, but maybe they're not worth very much. So the first thing you want to do is you want to do a patent search, and we'll talk a little bit about how you can do that, because that'll become an integral part of your thesis proposal. I'll want you to make sure that you have the freedom to operate and maybe even the freedom to patent. You'll want to be able to do a patent application. I won't ask you to do that, but you could in theory do it on your own. And then you have to deal with office actions, and that's when the patent office comes back to you with the objections. Once you have your patent, you have the freedom to manufacture. You have the freedom to exclude others from manufacturing, and you even have the freedom to license to others so that they can manufacture. So in terms of creating a consumer product, you may need an awful lot of money to start manufacturing on your own. But if you can take this idea that you have with your patent and approach somebody who will license it for you, then maybe you don't need any money. They pay you to use your idea. People who license for a living are around here, and they come to meetings called the Inventor Association of Connecticut meetings. I'm the president of that. They call it IACT, and there'll be a meeting at the end of the month, March 31st. And in that meeting, we'll talk about crowdfunding. But also at that meeting, you'll find people who specialize. Mary Elroy, for example, specializes in licensing games. Just games. That's all she does. She goes to all the game conventions. She markets games. She sells games. She licenses games. She knows all the game manufacturers. Doug Campbell, another example, all he does is kitchen products. He works for Lifetime Brands. He's a Lifetime Brands representative. He's always recruiting for new ideas for kitchen products, whatever they may be. I have one that he marketed. You pump it up and it squirts oil. It's called Mr. Misto. It's very clever because you don't buy the aerosol oils and spray them on the pan. You can buy any oil you want to and spray it on, and the oil can be flavored or it can be special. You know, exotic olive oil or exotic spices could go in the oil. And so there are these interesting things you can do for gourmet devices. I got another guy, his name is Bob Oros. His specialty is to work with large companies, and he's got a new thing called Diaper Buds. And with Diaper Buds, he can sell it through Procter & Gamble, and you always have a clean diaper. It's sealed, and it's one of these things where women who have children are always worried about having cloth diapers filling their bags. They take up a lot of space. But if you always have a clean diaper with you, that's one of those things. I had it on my desk, and my students looked at it and they thought, "Oh, Professor Lyon, you need this?" No. This is, my friend has invented something. I don't actually use these things, thankfully. So there are all these interesting and wonderful inventions that you can come up with, and they don't have to be like really complicated things. In fact, the simplest inventions are the best because they're easier to manufacture. Sometimes I'm very jealous of my friends because they have these very simple inventions, and I'm working on these very complicated things, and I'm thinking, why am I working so hard on this complicated thing? I could have invented something simple, like the cover your bald spot invention or something. Patent assignment is different from inventorship. Patent assignment means that you get the financial benefit of the patent. I have a friend of mine, his name is Justin. He worked for ASML, the lithography manufacturer in Wilton. They make the TwinScan device, which costs, I think it's over $500,000 per. And it makes silicon wafers. He has over 40 patents, but he has assignment on none of them. He's the inventor, but because he was working at ASML at the time, they take all the assignment. They have all the benefit, and they can license it out. And then there's the question about how much is that patent worth? And patent valuation, like obviousness, is in the eye of the beholder. Kodak, a very famous company in this country, was starting to go bankrupt. So they thought they would hire an outside firm, and the outside firm would estimate how much their patent portfolio is worth. And the outside firm said it's worth over $2 billion. That's what they said. And they said, this is great. We'll license out our patents, and we'll be able to recover the firm, and we will avoid bankruptcy. So they offered the patents for sale. Nobody wanted them. At the end of the day, they were able to make not $2 billion, but $100 million. And the whole company went bankrupt. So estimating the value of a patent portfolio is very difficult. And people who are professionals get it wrong all the time. Here's my little trademark logo. What's a trademark? Well, you can make a fanciful design. You can also use an interesting combination of words. So here's Doc Java. I'm docjava.com. And so I could create sort of a fancy-looking orangey logo and say that's my trademark. Or I could just leave it as text without any kind of logo at all. Or I could have a saying. Too much Doc Java is just enough. Because nobody can have too much Doc Java. So as a result, if I want, I can trademark the saying. Here's a good one. I just coined it the other day. Real engineers read data sheets. I could trademark that one. Real engineers read data sheets. And it's true, because I see my undergraduates and they say, I don't know how to use this chip. And I say, real engineers read data sheets. And it was something simple, like a 555 timer. He says, but everybody knows how to use it. I said, nobody's born knowing how to use a 555 timer. Real engineers read data sheets. My new catchphrase. So you can trademark just about anything that you can think of. I could have one. One good aphorism deserves another. That's a good one. I could trademark that. I don't know why I should, but there it is. Anything you come up with that's distinguishing, you could use it in commerce. In fact, it's a requirement that you use it in commerce. Otherwise, you lose it. You've got to renew it. There's licensing fees that you have to pay when you get a trademark and when you file it and when you keep it. So it's not free. You can use it for goods or services, or both. A lot of times people will file an interference on a trademark. When you file the trademark, it comes out in the Federal Register. There are people who scan this for a living. And they will see your trademark and they will say, oh, you can't use Kleenex because that violates my client's trademark. It dilutes the trademark. And they'll file an interference and it'll cause an office action in the patent office. And they'll prevent you from getting the trademark. You know, but my name is McDonald's. And I want to open a restaurant called McDonald's. Sorry, you can't do it. Because it dilutes the trademark for McDonald's, a well-known restaurant company. We don't care if you were born McDonald's or if McDonald's was 17 generations ago. Because it's an established company doing business under this name. And you can't just violate their trademark. I mean, there's a compelling argument why you can't start a restaurant named McDonald's. Right? That makes sense, right? So these are fanciful designs. Napster had a very fanciful design. Kazaa, I don't know them. Scour, I like that design. I don't know them either. Common names can be used as trademarks. For example, Scour is a common name. Right? Java is a common name. But when Java is used for beverages, it's okay. You can have a Java cafe. But when you use Java for a computer programming language, then it's not okay and it dilutes the trademark. But if Netscape comes out with JavaScript and JavaScript is permitted, and it was, it dilutes the trademark of Java because Java is a different language from JavaScript. It diluted the trademark. And when you go to the bookstore, you can hear the people go, gee, what should I learn, JavaScript or Java? They don't know. They don't know the difference. And that's key. It's a key reason why you've diluted the trademark. Sun, at the time, made a terrible mistake, in my opinion, by not filing an interference against JavaScript. It had been called LiveScript by Netscape. So it's important for you to have first use in order to maintain your exclusivity. And you must have continued use, which means you must do commerce on it regularly, and then you have to swear that you're doing commerce on it when you file for renewal on your trademarks. Loud out there. Now someone will knock. So I have to understand a little bit more about what I can do to protect my intellectual property. I made a little circuit board. And on the circuit board I write Doc Java Incorporated, and then I put in the TM. And so then I say people know that there's a trademark here. They can't make another board that says Doc Java on it. So if somebody else copies my board, at least you'll know it's not an original Doc Java board. So I'm protecting myself somewhat. Arduino does the same thing. I don't know if you're familiar with the Arduino product, but if it has Arduino written on it with a fanciful infinity sign, then that's considered a trademark. So you can open source your hardware, but if you want to be the manufacturer, you really want to put a trademark on it that makes it yours. And what happens if somebody violates your trademark? I think you just have a right to sue. It's actionable, but it's not criminal. Nobody goes to jail unless they deliberately counterfeit and then start to sell. Then they can go to jail. For example, you see knockoffs for Rolex watches and Gucci bags and Coach bags being sold in Canal Street in Manhattan. They can get raided and they can go to jail for doing what they're doing. So that's interesting. There are registered trademarks, symbols, and then there are unregistered trademark symbols. If you use, on a Mac, I think it's option 2, but I don't know how it's done on some other keyboards, you can get the little TM sign. It depends on how they set up the fonts, I guess. If you register the trademark with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, it's uspto.gov, then you can put in the R with the circle around it, and then it shows it's a registered trademark. Authorship is different from inventorship, right? In authorship, you're writing something that's yours. So if I write a program in Java, I can copyright it. You can look at it and say, that's a nice program. I would like my code to do the same thing, only faster. So I'm going to take the whole thing and rewrite it in Fortran. Doesn't violate the copyright. You translate a work into a different language, it doesn't violate the copyright. I take Cat in the Hat, written in English, and I translate it to Latin, catus pedisatus. Doesn't violate the copyright. But if I want the images from Cat in the Hat, then I better license those from Dr. Seuss or his estate, because otherwise I'll be violating the copyright. Catus pedisatus, by the way, is Latin for Cat in the Hat. You can actually buy a Latin primer called Catus pedisatus. Bought it for my niece. She's studying Latin. So it's an interesting point. Copyrights can protect you for the life of the author plus 75 years. But if you're a company like Disney, it can go longer. Dramatic works, plays, music, artistic works. Let's see, copyright. Exclusive right to copy, publish, distribute, perform, exhibit. Now, perform, that's an interesting point. Disney sued actor because they dressed up like Mickey Mouse as a joke. They thought it was funny. Well, it turns out it wasn't considered fair use, and the suit was successful. So performing and making yourself look like Mickey Mouse, you get sued by Disney. Some would say it interferes with the freedom of speech, which is a constitutional right. But unfortunately, copyright law doesn't necessarily agree with that point of view. So what have I done when I've copyrighted something? I've protected the printed word, but I haven't protected the ideas about which the words are written. For that, I need a patent. So as a result, the copyright is somewhat limited. There is a question of who the owner of a copyright is. When I go to make a book, I sign a contract, and that gives the copyright assignment to the publisher. So even though I'm the author and my name appears on the book, the copyright is still the publisher's until the book goes out of print and I get permission from the publisher to reproduce the book, which I have done. And once that occurs and the copyright reverts back to me, I can go and make a Kindle version of the book, which I did. So now you can go onto Amazon. Amazon doesn't actually have the copyright, but they have my permission to mechanically reproduce the book. And so then what they do is they license it and effectively give me back a royalty for selling the copies of the book that I supply to them. So here's the copyright symbol. It's the C with the circle around it. And that's kind of like the registered trademark with a difference. And the difference is it's a C instead of an R. Sorry, yeah, registered as opposed to unregistered, which is a TM. And they've extended it now. It says 50 years here, but I think now it's 75 years. But I have to look it up just to be sure. How do you prove ownership? I think that's very tricky. I probably could prove ownership by virtue of the paper trail, maybe the contracts that I've signed. It's not necessarily easy to prove ownership on something that you've written. If I write something and I put it up on the web, it might be the case that I can prove that my authorship was done prior to anybody else's appearance on the web. But if you copy it and strip off the copyright, how am I supposed to prove that I own that work? How do I do that? I have to go to court. I have to prove it to court. And that's not easy. If you take the work and distribute it or exhibit it, that's considered an indirect infringement. If I give you actual notice, then it's a direct infringement. The question of what actual notice is open. Actual notice. Well, if I send somebody an email, is that actual notice? The courts don't say. Do I have to hire a process server to give you an in-person notice? That's sufficient, but I don't know if it's necessary. So it may be the case that I have to send a certified letter. That might be actual notice. I've often sent emails to people and they thought I was giving them actual notice. I was just saying, no, I thought this is an interesting patent and I thought you'd like to see it. People get very offended when you tell them about a patent. So as a result of having given actual notice, once you establish what actual notice is, if somebody violates your patent, you can file for what's called triple damages. So in one case, the University of Texas invited a visiting scientist who came for a year into a laboratory where they were describing a new kind of battery called the lithium polymer battery. The visiting scientist then proceeded to go back to their country, file for a patent, and then get the patent, and it turned out that University of Texas couldn't get the benefit of the patent even though they had done the invention. The damages came to $500 million. No kidding. Damages. So, and this was one of those sort of big cases that came to the Wall Street Journal. Damages can be a lot. For something big like a lithium polymer battery, you can sort of see it because it's in all the laptops. It's in all the smartphones. It's in, well, all the little devices that have to be charged because nickel-cadmium batteries are just inferior. Let's think about the copyright issue. Some people have what is called fair use. What's fair use? If you put it in your thesis and quote it, that's fair use. If I go to the library and ask them for a copy of an article and they give it to me for free, that's fair use. If I want to take that article and put it on my web page and let other people download it, that's a copyright infringement. So, tricky business. If I take the article and I put it on my Dropbox and keep it private except for my class and just let the class download it so they can read the article, that's fair use. I'm not trying to profit off it. I'm not trying to disseminate it widely. I'm using it for the purpose of academic education. That's fair use. So the question of what fair use is or not, it can be subtle. For private study, that's fair use. If I have a private recording of a movie and I want to disseminate it using what's a good sharing facility that uses torrent? Anybody can think of anything? It's Napster, but that's gone now. There must be something available. I don't know what. Anybody know? I can't think of what it would be. But I could use that as a example of what wouldn't be fair use. Downloading the latest version of Star Wars and then disseminating it through some BitTorrent facility. That's not fair use. So now you've got a little insight into the patents, and I thought what I could do is create a little homework assignment. Oops. Where are we now? Here we are. So what are we up to? Homework 7, is it? Six was validation. So it's homework 7. Homework 7. Gantt charts. So for this homework, what I would like to do is please submit, I'll say resubmit your problem statement Oops. Approach and approach. Modify as needed. In the approach, add a Gantt chart along with a list of milestones that you intend to accomplish as a part of the thesis. That is, if you decide to continue the thesis, there'll be certain things that you'll need to do, whether it's hardware development or software development or both. Maybe there'll be some sort of validation section in there. Maybe there'll be a section that involves 3 or 4 drafts of your thesis, and you'll have to allocate time for someone like me to read them. So as a result, you're going to have to be able to get through sort of a process, and you know that Thesis 1 is being offered this summer. So if some of you want to do Thesis 1, you really want to start to think in terms of when you're going to start it. It'll probably be starting perhaps as soon as June 1. So if you're starting in June, you're going to want to make sure that you're finished with the Thesis 1 section by the beginning of September, or end of August. So that's typical. If you're working on the thesis, you'll probably want to start this summer. It's not required, but you can at least plan it. Thesis is still optional, but I'd like to see a proper plan and resources that you can do, things you can do concurrently, things that are required for you to do sequentially. You're going to have to plan for that. So this is going to be part of your, I'll call it, research agenda. Let's see now. Convincing research schedule. Right? So what we don't want to see is, I'll finish all the hardware in 2 weeks and that's it. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. Maybe that's not realistic. You know, if all the hardware is like 30 chips on a circuit board plus debugging, yeah, that sounds like it's a little aggressive. So make it realistic. With your, I'll call it, debugging. Right? I can't just build hardware and say it's untested, because my assumption is untested hardware is broken hardware. Same thing with software. Untested software is assumed broken. So you better make sure you've got time for testing, time for debugging, time for maintenance. And of course you will need, be sure to include time for validation. Right? You gotta, after you're done with your software and your hardware, you better do some experiments and validate your hypothesis and what happens if it's not correct. Things like that. Any questions about this homework assignment before I hit submit? Let's go through this process. We're going to put in, please remember to include your problem statement, single attempt, due date, next week, time. I notice some people are submitting their homeworks late. Right? Let's not submit them late. You know, there's 10 points per day late assessed on these homework assignments. So when they come in 10 days late, they're not worth anything anymore. Submit them on time. Let's see what else we got. Okay, so I'm going to reread this and make sure I got everything. Resubmit your problem statement and approach. Modify as needed. I want to see the problem statement again, because I need to make sure it makes sense with regard to your approach. The Gantt chart will go in the approach. Any questions about this? All right. Hitting submit now. And there is homework number 7. Now, here's my question for you. How will you do your Gantt chart? I hear murmuring in the background. Would someone like to murmur louder? Someone said, "What's a Gantt chart?" All right, well, it sounds like you guys aren't sure. I personally used Google Docs. You guys can use whatever you want. I give you the freedom to explore, and in fact, I encourage you to explore. So you'll find something much better than Google Docs, I hope. And then you'll tell me about it, and then we'll all be educated by your discovery. Maybe you'll get a patent on it. Let's take a break.